Hello everybody! Today we're going to try to make some bread, as well as an olive oil, garlic, and balsamic vinegar dipping oil. So the type of bread that we're making today is called Focaccia bread. I think I said that right. Focaccia? Focaccia?
Focaccia.
Anyways, we're starting off with a bowl and some flour, just like all bread recipes do. It was not a one-person job. There was flour all over the counter after this. Now it's time to add some yeast, courtesy of Ben. We'll be using some quick rise instant yeast just to make the process a little bit more easy and predictable. Sprinkle the yeast all over the flour, and then you're going to end up whisking that in so that it's all combined together. Next, we started to make our liquid. With this, we started off with 2 teaspoons of salt. And the recipe that we followed included 2 tablespoons of honey, but because I wanted to be able to sprinkle some sugar on the top of the bread later, I only did 1.5 tablespoons. That way it wouldn't end up being too sweet. And of course, once the honey was added in, we decided to lick the spoons because this honey is particularly delicious. We then dissolve all of those ingredients into some warm water. Make sure that the water is not too hot or you'll end up killing your yeast because yeast is alive. Alright, once the liquid is ready, make a small hole in the center of your dry ingredients. That is where you're going to pour it. I almost started to do this, but I didn't trust myself, so I handed it off to Ben, and success! There it is. Now I ended up having some gloves on to mix this together because I really don't like the feeling of dough all over my hands. However, the gloves that we had ended up being a size too big for my hands, and the dough ended up being more sticky than expected, so while I was mixing it, it slowly started to pull the gloves off of me just from the weight of the dough and the stickiness. I tried to persevere as much as possible, but eventually Ben had to take over. Once the dough is properly mixed, you have to smooth it into a ball. And then that ball gets doused with some olive oil, which is then smoothed over the top and around the bottom, just to make sure it doesn't stick to too many things and keeps the moisture locked inside. This is eventually going to rise for 24 hours. I don't think we let it rise for that long because we were a little bit tight on time. We did either 18 or 20. Cover this with some plastic wrap or a wet tea towel. Now you might notice some dark spots in our dough. That's because we decided to season our bread with some Italian seasoning and garlic powder. Alright, so 18 hours later, we removed the dough from the fridge. So it's very important, apparently, for this type of bread to let your dough rest in the fridge for that first rise. Don't really know why, but every single recipe that we looked at, that was the case. After you take it out of the fridge, for us it was a bit stiff, but we just tried to re-knead it into a ball by folding in the sides a few times, deflating it in the process, and then let it rise one more time for 4 hours at room temperature. At this point, it was ready to be dumped into the bread pan and spread out as much as possible, and then sit for another rise. our dough was rising for the last time, we decided to do a few other things. The first of which was preheat our oven to 425 degrees, as well as start chopping up some garlic for our very quick version of garlic confit, which would eventually make this really delicious dipping oil with garlic, balsamic vinegar, olive oil, and chili flakes. So that last rise ended up taking our dough an hour, which was double the time that we expected. Don't worry, we did turn off and on the stove again just to make sure it wasn't on that whole time. But we essentially just wanted to wait till the dough filled the whole pan, poked some holes on it, sprinkled some more olive oil and a little bit of sugar, and then popped it into the oven. That was done in 25 minutes and ended up having a very nice golden brown color on top. And it was not as fluffy as I was expecting it to be. It was a bit more dense this time, but it was still very delicious and extremely soft. Now, focaccia bread usually comes out with these big, beautiful bubbles, so there is definitely something that we did wrong or different with our recipe, but I was not disappointed with the final result at all because the soft, chewy bread was just perfect for the dipping oil that we created, and I would not be mad if it happened like this every single time.